"You can send me back," the mail-order bride asked. The cowboy answered, "My son already chose you." Wind is the first thing you hear at Red Willow Crossing, dry and persistent, slipping through split fence rails and worrying the depot boards like a restless hand. The camera starts wide. Prairie bleats a bone, heat wavering off the road. Then it glides in as the stagecoach lurches to a stop, wheels coughing dust. One woman steps down, not starry-eyed, not hard, just steady, a plain coat the color of river mud, hair pinned tight, a few strands stuck to her cheek. In her left hand, a doctor's satchel worn smooth by miles. She pauses on the step, as if listening for a welcome that never comes. Her name is Evelyn Hart, and she didn't come chasing a husband. She came chasing work. A small notice in the city paper had promised operator needed reliable hands. It didn't say the telegraph office was the back room of the Mercantile. It didn't say lightning had snapped the line and nobody had climbed the pole since. And it didn't say the town was thirsty. The well in the center of Red Willow was down to a gritty trickle. Every bucket came up heavy with mud, lighter with water. Folks spoke around the problem like it was a sick child. Quietly, carefully, afraid to make it worse by naming it. Men in sweat-stained hats watched her satchel more than her face. 2 women on the porch went silent when she passed, then resumed their talk with their eyes. Inside, the storekeeper, Mr. Daly, slid the telegraph key toward her like it might bite. "You can try," he said, and his tone made it clear trying was all anyone expected. Evelyn opened her satchel, not to impress, but to settle herself. Wire, a rag, a pencil stub, a tin of salve, small tools, placed down with the neatness of someone who has learned that order is a kind of shelter. She touched the key. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. No answer. Only flies at the window. Evelyn leaned closer. "The line's open," she murmured, "but it's hurt somewhere." A chair scraped behind her. A man had come in without anyone announcing him, dust on his boots, calm weight in his shoulders. Gideon Vale, livery owner. Quiet as a fence post until you needed him. He looked at the telegraph set, then at Evelyn's hands. "You climb?" he asked. It wasn't a dare. It was the plainest question in the world, like asking if you can carry water. "I can," Evelyn said, "but I'd rather not fall. Got a ladder?" Gideon returned with one as weathered as the town itself. The pole stood down the street, its insulators dulled by dust. Under it, the ground was cracked like old pottery. Evelyn stared up into shimmer and felt the old tug of doubt. If she failed here, where would she go next? She started toward the pole anyway. As Gideon carried the ladder behind her, he spoke without looking at her. "You got kin?" Evelyn kept her eyes on the road. "Not nearby," she said. Gideon nodded once, as if he knew what that could cost. Then he added, softer, "Town stare. Don't mistake it for teeth. Most folks here just forgot how to welcome." She climbed. The ladder wobbled. Gideon braced it with both hands, feet planted wide. From up there, the town looked tired. Patched roofs, wagons missing spokes, a church steeple leaning like it had grown weary of pointing at heaven. Evelyn found the break. Wire scorched where lightning had kissed it. New length, tight wrap, clean connection. Hands steady, breath measured. Down below, someone muttered, "Ain't no use." Evelyn didn't answer. She finished the knot. When she climbed down, Gideon steadied her elbow as her boots hit the ground. A brief touch. Respectful. Then he stepped back like he hadn't done it at all. Inside again, she tapped the key. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. For a heartbeat. Nothing. Then, faint as a cricket far off, came the answering click. No one cheered. But shoulders loosened. Eyes lifted. Mr. Daly's hand trembled as he grabbed the message pad, as if the town's future might finally have a place to land. In that hush, a little cough came from the aisle, thin, stubborn. A boy no older than 7 stood there with lips cracked in the dry air, holding his grandmother's hand like an anchor. Evelyn didn't ask permission. She dipped a finger in her tin, dabbed salve on a split knuckle, and wrapped it with her rag, so gentle the child forgot to flinch. "Costs nothing," she said, when the old woman tried to protest. And just like that, the town saw her as more than a stranger with a wire spool. Evelyn's smile was small and private, and in it, you could see the first crack in the wall she'd built around her own heart. But the bell over the door jingled again, and the air changed. A man in a clean coat stepped in, carrying a ledger like it was law itself. He didn't look at Evelyn. He looked past her, straight at Mr. Daly. "Water allotments," he said. "New terms." The room went still. Gideon's shoulders went rigid. Mr. Daly's pencil stopped mid-scratch. Evelyn watched their faces, and a question rose that would not let her rest. What kind of town loses its water, and who gets to decide it stays lost? The ledger man's boots were too clean for Red Willow Crossing. That was what Evelyn noticed first. Not the sharp collar, not the silver watch chain. The boots. No dust ground into the seams. No scuffs from fence rails. He moved like someone who traveled by rail and expected the world to meet him halfway. He laid the ledger on Daly's counter and opened it with slow confidence, letting the pages whisper. Outside, a gust pushed grit along the street, like it was sweeping the town clean of anyone who didn't belong. "New terms," he repeated, tapping a column with a pale finger. "Payment in advance. No exceptions, and the price is higher. Drought, you know. Drought, as if the sky had personally sent him a letter." Mr. Daly swallowed. His eyes darted to the flour barrels, then to the jar of pennies by the register, then away, like looking straight at the truth might burn. Gideon had come closer, without anyone seeing him move. He stood beside the counter, hands relaxed, but his jaw was set in a way that made Evelyn think of a gate locked for a reason. "Who are you?" Gideon asked. The man smiled, the kind of smile that keeps its warmth for itself. "Clark Pruitt, West Ridge Water Company. We supply. You pay. Everybody lives." The old woman with the boy tightened her grip. The boy's eyes went to Evelyn's satchel, as if it held water the same way it held bandage cloth. Evelyn didn't speak yet. She watched the faces in the room. She watched what people didn't say. "West Ridge," Gideon said. "That's a long way from here." Clark's shrug was almost polite. "We go where the need is." A cough at the back of the store. Someone laughed once, bitter and short, then stopped when nobody joined in. Clark turned a page. "You're behind," he said, like the words were simply weather. "Without payment, your shipment of pipe fittings, lamp oil, grain delayed. Held. You understand." Mr. Daly's hand hovered over the pencil, then dropped. "We can't pay what we don't have." Clark closed the ledger with a soft thump that felt too loud. "Then you'll have to decide what matters more, the pride of standing on your own or the convenience of water." Evelyn felt the room tilt toward him, pulled by fear the way thirsty plants lean toward shade. This wasn't just business. This was a rope around the town, tightened a little each week, until everyone forgot they'd ever breathed easy. Clark lifted his hat as if he delivered a courtesy. "I'll return in 3 days. Noon." He glanced, finally, at Evelyn, just once. A quick assessment. A stranger. A tool, maybe. Then he stepped out into the sun and left the bell jangling behind him. For a moment, nobody moved. Even the flies seemed to pause their buzzing. Then voices started, low, overlapping, like water trying to find a crack. "He's squeezing us dry. 3 days. What are we supposed to do?" "Same as always. We wait." Gideon turned, his gaze landing on Evelyn with a steadiness that didn't ask for pity. "You fix that line," he said, "so messages can get out now. That might matter." Evelyn nodded slowly. A thought was forming, careful as a match struck in wind. "Who owns the well?" Daly's laugh was tired. "Well belongs to the ground. Ground belongs to whoever can defend it." "That's not an answer," Evelyn said. A woman by the window, Mrs. Lark, Evelyn would later learn, spoke up, voice thin but sharp. The company filed papers years back, claimed rights to the spring upstream. They don't own our well, but they control what feeds it. They built a diversion ditch, said it was for improvement. Evelyn pictured it, water being guided away, not with guns, but with documents and shovels. "Where's the spring?" she asked. Heads turned. People exchanged looks like the question itself was dangerous. Gideon answered anyway. 2 miles north. Cottonwood Gulch. Used to be a place kids played. Now it's fenced. A quiet beat, and then he added, almost reluctantly, "My wife used to take our boy there." The way his voice softened on "our boy" told Evelyn this was the center of his life, and also the wound around which everything else had formed. Evelyn saw the small boy again, the one with the cracked lips, not Gideon's child. Different, but the same hunger in the eyes. She took a breath. If the telegraph works, we can call for an inspector, a judge, someone who can challenge a claim. Daly shook his head. "We've written. We've begged. Answers come slow if they come at all." "What about your neighbors?" Evelyn asked. "Other towns." Mrs. Lark's eyes flickered. "West Ridge got them too. Quietly. Everyone's afraid if they speak up, they'll be next." Evelyn leaned on the counter, lowering her voice like she was sharing a recipe. "Then we don't ask them to speak. We ask them to listen, to witness." Gideon studied her. "You're saying bring people here." "I'm saying," Evelyn replied, "that hunger hides in silence. If we make enough noise, honest noise, some will have to look." Outside, a wagon creaked past. The sound seemed to stretch the day long, as if time itself was reluctant to move forward. That evening, Red Willow Crossing looked even smaller in the setting sun. The camera follows Evelyn walking down the street toward the livery. A few porch lamps flicker. Dogs shift in the shadows. Somewhere, a piano key gets pressed once and then stops like a memory that can't finish its song. Gideon's livery smelled of hay and leather and the faint sweetness of apples kept for the horses. In the corner, a small chair sat empty, its legs chewed by time. Evelyn's gaze paused on it. Gideon noticed. He didn't rush to explain. He simply said, "My son, Thomas, he used to sit there and tell the horses secrets, like they were people." Evelyn nodded, careful. "Where is he now?" Gideon's mouth tightened. "Buried on a hill behind the church. Fever took him 2 winters back. Water was bad then, too." The words were not dramatic. They were plain. That's what made them heavy. Evelyn set her satchel down on a bale of hay. "I'm sorry," she said and meant it, but she didn't linger on it. She had learned sorrow can turn into a show if you stare at it too long. Gideon cleared his throat, staring at a harness on the wall. "Folks think I hate the company because I'm stubborn. Truth is, I hate that they make you choose. Pay up or watch your people thin out." Evelyn's fingers brushed the strap of her satchel. "I've seen towns make the wrong choice," she said quietly. Gideon looked at her then, really looked. "What happened to you?" There it was. The question that always comes when someone senses a shadow behind your eyes. Evelyn didn't answer right away. The camera comes in close, her thumb rubbing the worn seam of her bag, the way her shoulders rise and fall like she's steadying herself against an old wave. "I used to work in a city infirmary," she said at last. "We had water, clean water, more than we needed. But people still died because no one cared enough to notice them soon enough. I left because I couldn't stand the noise of it, the endless clatter. Here, you can hear a person breathe. That matters." Gideon nodded once. Not sympathy. Recognition. They worked late under lamplight. Evelyn wrote messages to surrounding towns, careful and clear, not pleading, not accusing, just facts. The spring fence, the diversion ditch, the new terms, the 3-day deadline. She invited them to send delegates, pastors, shopkeepers, anyone with steady reputation, to be present at Red Willow Crossing on the 3rd day. Why would they come? Gideon asked. Evelyn's eyes lifted to the lantern flame. "Because One day it will be their turn. And because people are kinder than companies believe, the next morning, the first reply clicked through on the telegraph. Then another. Not promises of money, not threats, simple words. We'll send someone. We're listening. We're sorry it's come to this. As the days narrowed toward noon, the town shifted, not into panic, into motion. Mrs. Lark organized boiling water stations. Daly opened his storeroom and let people take what they needed, writing names in a book instead of demanding coins. Old men repaired a broken wagon wheel for a family they barely knew. Someone no one admitted who left a basket of dried peaches on Evelyn's doorstep. And yet, even in that warmth, a harder current ran underneath, because each time someone looked up the road, they were asking the same silent question. What if Clark Pruitt returns, and we still can't stop him? On the second night, a storm built far off. Not rain, just thunder rolling along the horizon like a warning. The air smelled of ozone and dust. The lanterns burned a little lower. People slept lighter. Evelyn sat at the telegraph table, listening to the wires sing faintly in the wind. Gideon stood in the doorway, a shadow cut by lamplight. "You think the company will play fair?" he asked. Evelyn's answer came soft but certain. "Fair isn't the point. Light is. We shine enough light on what they're doing, and they'll have to change their posture." Gideon exhaled, the sound almost a laugh. "And if they don't?" Evelyn looked up, and in her eyes was something older than hope, something earned. Then she said, "We learn what kind of town this really is." The thunder answered, closer now, and somewhere north, beyond fences and paper claims, water still moved in the dark, quiet, persistent, waiting to be found. Noon came with a strange kind of quiet. The storm never broke into rain. It only rinsed the air with thunder and left the morning clearer than it had any right to be. Sunlight lay flat and bright across Red Willow Crossing, catching on window glass and the pale dust on wagon tongues. Somewhere, a meadowlark tried a song and stopped, as if it too was waiting to see what happened next. By the time the church bell tapped once, people were already gathering near Sedwell, tight circles, hands folded, faces turned to the road. Evelyn stood beside the depot door, the telegraph key at her back like a heartbeat. Her coat was clean but plain. No show, no theatrics, just readiness. Gideon waited a few steps behind her, hat low, eyes scanning the horizon. And then, at the far end of the street, wagons appeared. Not West Ridge wagons, neighbor wagons. A buckboard from Cinder Hollow, a spring cart from Lone Mesa, a tall wagon with a canvas top from Dry Fork, its driver waving like he'd been rehearsing courage all the way here. Folks climbed down stiff-legged and dusty, carrying nothing more than water skins and notebooks and the heavy, simple authority of witnesses. When Mrs. Lark saw them, she pressed a hand to her mouth, not because she was surprised, because she'd almost stopped believing. Evelyn watched the town's shoulders lift one by one, as if air had finally reached the bottom of their lungs. And for a moment, the camera catches it close. A farmer's fingers loosening from a fist, a young mother shifting her baby higher on her hip, an old man taking off his hat like he was in the presence of something holy. But a question still hung in the heat. Would witnesses be enough against a company that wrote its own rules? The answer rolled in on clean boots and a polished smile. Clark Pruitt's buggy came into town at exactly noon. The horse was sleek. The harness gleamed. Clark stepped down like he was stepping onto a porch he already owned. Two men followed him, quiet, broad-shouldered, carrying clipboards and a kind of practiced boredom. Clark's eyes moved across the crowd, and for the first time his smile tightened. He hadn't expected chairs set out. He hadn't expected strangers standing beside Red Willow's people, taking notes with calm faces. He glanced at Evelyn. Busy morning. Evelyn didn't lift her voice. She simply nodded toward the well. "We're listening today," she said. "All of us." Clark let out a soft chuckle, as if this were a harmless town play. He opened his ledger on the edge of the well's stone rim, turning pages as though paper could replace water. Terms remain, he said. Payment in advance. Or supply stops. A delegate from Dry Fork, an older woman with sun-browned cheeks and a pen tucked behind her ear, cleared her throat. You're saying you control the spring upstream? Clark's chin tipped up. West Ridge holds rights. Filed proper. Evelyn stepped forward one pace. Not confrontational. Measured. Rights to draw water, she said, or rights to divert the spring away from the towns that depend on it? Clark's eyes narrowed just slightly. That's the same thing. It isn't, Evelyn replied. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a folded sheet, thin, creased, protected like something fragile. Not a deed, not a dramatic reveal. A survey copy, borrowed from Daly's back safe. Its ink faded but legible. On it, a marked line, an old public easement sketched in a careful hand, running along Cottonwood Gulch. Gideon held the paper steady, while Evelyn pointed. Her finger didn't shake. This shows a community channel established before West Ridge filed anything, she said. A shared right-of-way for water flow to the wells. Your ditch doesn't just take water. It breaks the established course. Clark's mouth opened and closed once, like a man tasting a word he didn't like. Evelyn continued, quieter. We sent for a county inspector 2 days ago. He's on the rail line as we speak. Telegraph confirmed it this morning. Clark's gaze flicked to the depot door behind her. A tiny movement. But the crowd saw it. The delegates saw it. And in that instant, Clark realized a wire he'd never bothered to repair had become something else entirely. A pastor from Lone, Mesa spoke gently, like he was reading scripture to a nervous room. Nobody's here to threaten you, Mr. Pruitt. We're here to be certain the hungry aren't made hungrier through paperwork. Clark tried to recover his easy tone. Inspections take time. Meanwhile, my terms. A child's cough cut through the air. The same boy from Daly's store. Standing near his grandmother, chin lifted to watch. Evelyn's eyes met his for a heartbeat. Then she said the simplest thing, the thing that changed the whole shape of the moment. We are negotiating our right to drink, she said. We're restoring it. For a long second, only wind moved. It teased the pages of Clark's ledger. It stirred dust at the horse's hooves. It carried the faint creak of the well's old pulley. Clark's smile returned, but thinner. You don't have a means to restore anything, he said. You barely have the water to wash the dust off your hands. Evelyn turned, not to Clark, but to the crowd. Mrs. Lark, she called softly. The woman stepped forward with a small bundle wrapped in cloth. She opened it to reveal a tin cup and a handful of coins, nickels, pennies, a worn silver piece. It's not much, she said, eyes shining. But it's mine. Then Daly came, holding his ledger, his real ledger, the one filled with names and notes and credit offered without interest. This town's been paying in trust for years, he said. Might be time trust counted as currency. One by one, people stepped in. A sack of nails, a coil of rope, 2 lengths of pipes salvaged from a broken trough. Not gifts, commitments. The delegates watched, writing steadily, witnessing what could not be faked. Gideon finally spoke, voice low but clear. My boy used to tell me water listens, he said, staring at the road north. Maybe it does. Maybe it's been waiting to hear we still deserve it. No speeches followed. No cheering. Just action. That afternoon, under a sun that leaned west and softened, the town walked to Cottonwood Gulch. Not in anger, but in purpose. Clark's men protested. Clark protested louder. Then, when the first delegate raised a hand and calmly said, "Let the inspector decide," Clark fell quiet. At the fence line, Evelyn found the lock, rusted, cheap, not a fortress, just a symbol. She didn't break it in some dramatic snap. She looked at the delegates, then to Clark. "We won't trespass," she said. "We'll wait at the boundary. The inspector will open it lawfully." And they did. They waited with the patience of people who have buried too much to waste energy on swagger. Near dusk, the inspector arrived in a dusty railcoat, eyes tired but honest. He listened. He studied the survey. He walked the diversion ditch with a small notebook, asking questions that made Clark's answers shorter each time. Finally, the inspector stood at the old channel line and said, "This course predates the company filing. The diversion's out of compliance. Fence comes down. Water returns to the established flow. Temporary order, effective immediately." A hush fell that felt like the land itself exhaling. Clark's face went pale, then rigid. He closed his ledger without a word. When he climbed back into his buggy, his boots were no longer clean. Dust had found him at last. The fence came down the next morning. The camera lingers on the first trickle of water returning along the old channel, thin, hesitant, shining like a ribbon of glass. It moves past stones it hasn't touched in years. It gathers, gains confidence, and by midday it reaches the well. Evelyn stands by the pulley as Gideon lowers the bucket. The rope squeaks. The bucket dips. A splash echoes deep below. When the bucket rises, the water in it is clear enough to catch the sky. No one shouts. People simply step forward, one cup, then another. The boy drinks slowly, eyes wide, as if he's learning what enough feels like. That evening, lantern light warms the street. Someone sets a pot of beans on a shared table. A fiddle starts, not a dance tune, just a quiet melody that makes room for tired hearts. The town isn't suddenly rich. The roofs are still patched. The road is still dust. But the air is different. Later, in the soft dark behind the livery, Gideon leads Evelyn to a small grave on the hill. A simple marker. A few stones arranged like careful hands. "I used to come here and tell him what I couldn't fix," Gideon says. Evelyn kneels, sets a small wildflower by the marker. "Maybe fixing isn't always the point," she whispers. "Maybe staying is." Gideon looks down at her, and for the first time his face eases into something almost like peace. "You staying?" he asks, like he's afraid the wind might carry her away. Evelyn watches the town lights below, steady, close together, like people choosing warmth on purpose. "If you'll have me," she says. The final shot pulls back wide, red willow crossing under a clean sky. The well at its center, voices low and gentle, water moving again, and the last question settles in, quiet and inviting. How many places out there are waiting for one steady person, and a town brave enough to hold on to each other? If you want stories like this brought to life with calm, heartfelt voiceover, tell me in the comments what part moved you most, and where you're listening from. And if you like more frontier tales of hope, community, and second chances, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who enjoys a warm Western story.